we're set, right? We're good.
Yep.
Can you just tell me if stream looks okay? Because I'm not going to be able to see it. Can you guys hear me okay? Both stream looks good. Okay, perfect. Let's do it. So Jessica, thank you very much for coming on stream. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm nervous, but glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. Do you prefer to be called Jessica or Madam Faye?
Jessica's fine.
So Jessica, help me understand a little bit about what sort of motivated you to come on stream and what we're going to be talking about today.
My husband actually watches Domination Time a lot.
Okay.
And then he found you through him, and he's like, I think you would really like this doctor. The way he talks about things seems like you would benefit from. So I watched a couple of videos. I'm like, yeah, I really like this. And the big kicker was the interview that you did with Tom and the exchange that you guys had. It wasn't just one person talking. You guys both talked about things, and I really liked the exchange. So after I watched that, I sent the email.
Okay. Well, thanks for reaching out. So what would you like to talk about today?
I sent an email and I gave a little bit of details, and I can kind of try to backtrack a bit.
Yeah.
I have a lot of self-judgment that I have struggled with for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying to I try to move forward and figure out how to quell the judgment and just have a better healthy self-image.
Uh-huh.
And I have no idea where to start.
Okay, beautiful. So I think I already know what your problem is, which is that you're trying to quell the self-judgment.
Yeah.
So the first thing to point out is that so sometimes we have thoughts about ourselves and we're critical. And what do you do when you have those critical thoughts about yourselves?
Personally, it sort of depends on the day. Sometimes they just keep going. Other times I'm like, no, you're better than that. You're worth more than that.
Yeah.
That you need to stop doing that and let's go and do something different.
Yeah. And so if I were to put it, and we'll go into more details, but I just kind of want to outline things for the people who are watching. So the first thing is you fight against them, right? So it's a battle.
Yes.
And do you know who wins when you fight against yourself?
Probably no one.
Absolutely. Right? So that's the first thing to understand, is that when you fight against yourself, you just can't win. There's no winning, because you're going to lose and you're going to win. That's just, and I think this is what happens with self-judgment is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Okay, Jessica? So do you feel every day, so you're not fighting against, you're in a war against yourself?
Yeah.
Is that what it feels like?
Yes.
And it's kind of a war of attrition.
Yeah.
And there are some days that you win battles, but you're not making progress in the war.
No, it never stops.
Yeah. So I want to just point out to you that you can't, you can overcome that judgment temporarily, but over time, that takes a lot of energy when you overcome it, right?
Yes.
And then eventually, there's going to be a day. I understand you have kids?
Yes.
Yeah. So how many kids do you have?
I have 2 girls, and one of them's almost 3 and the other one's 1.5.
Yeah. So when you have 2 young kids at home, you're just going to lose battles of discipline and motivation, because kids just take an unbelievable amount of energy investment. You've got nothing left for yourself.
That's very true.
And so we've got to think about, how can we change the way in which you talk to yourself?
That is why we're calling today.
Absolutely.
Why we're talking today.
So why don't we start by can you tell me a little bit about how long you've been judging yourself?
Ever since I can remember.
Okay. So what do you remember when you were, let's say, in middle school?
Middle school. I wanted to be part of the popular kids group.
Uh-huh.
And I did my best to socialize with those people, but I could never really find common ground with them.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of figured that they just didn't like me.
Okay. And so, did you think this is going to sound... So the first thing to think about is that you tried to be something... So did you try really hard to get them to like you?
At the time, I probably thought I tried really hard, but looking back, I don't think I did.
Uh-huh.
I think when I met Rejection, I just kind of withdrew from the whole thing.
Okay.
I didn't really put forth a lot of effort after that.
And what do you think it was that make you withdraw?
I'm not sure how to handle rejection.
Okay.
It makes me have a worse self-judgment, and I don't know how to reconcile that. I don't know how to accept rejection.
Okay. I'm going to just think about that for a second. Okay. So this is going to sound kind of weird, but are you sure you don't accept rejection too much?
I guess that's a possibility.
Right? So if you're telling me that when someone rejects, like, let me put it to you this way. Like, let's say that I go to a used car salesman, and the used car salesman says, "Hey, I'd like you to buy this car." And I say no. If that person doesn't accept rejection, what are they going to do?
Still fight for you to buy that, even though you've said no.
Exactly. But what I'm hearing you say is that you actually don't do that, right? When they turn away, what you're actually saying is that when they shut you down, you don't try hard enough. So in a bizarre way, it sounds to me like you actually accept rejection way too easily.
I never thought about that, but yeah.
How does that feel when I say that? Like, does that resonate? Is that what could be going on?
It's definitely a new idea, and yes, it does resonate.
Okay. So now, so this is why people don't move forward. Because their conception of what's wrong with them is actually wrong. Because good diagnosis precedes good treatment. And so here you are saying that you don't accept rejection easily enough. But I think, like, the problem here is that you accept it too easily, and that's what traps you. You see that?
Yeah.
And so what we have to teach you how to do is actually do the very thing. So if you think that you're running a certain play, but you're actually running an opposite play, if you think you're playing a passing game, do you watch football?
No.
Okay. Do you
I
understand?
know enough about it to follow you, though.
Okay. So, like, if I think I'm running a passing game, but I'm actually running a running game, and that's not working, like, what I need to do is, like, improve my passing game. But does that make sense? Like, you think you're doing the thing that you're not doing, so no wonder it's not working, because you think you're doing something entirely different.
Yeah.
Right? So so now we get to a real question, right? So, which is, why do you accept rejection so easily? So if we talk about confidence, now this is making sense, because the problem here is that when someone rejects you, you value their opinion over what you feel yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Are you getting emotional?
I get emotional when I talk about this stuff. Yes, I do.
What are you feeling?
That what you're saying is the truth, and it's hard to accept.
What's hard to accept about it?
That I don't value myself enough.
Absolutely. Right? So that's beautiful. I mean, it's not beautiful that you don't value yourself enough. What I think is beautiful is, like, I don't have to explain the rest of it to you, right? So here in my mind, I had started out with this kind of whole map of, like, getting you to the conclusion that you don't value yourself as much as you need to. But you figured that part out all on your own.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
You do what? You figure things out on your own? Good.
Yeah.
Makes our life easy. Makes my life easy.
I do a lot of self-introspection and try to understand why I do the things that I do. But, you know, if I was thinking that I was doing one thing and I'm doing another, it makes a lot of sense. Well, I could figure this one out on my own.
Yeah. And so I want you to be really careful here, because when you're not able to figure things out on your own, you're probably judging yourself for not being able to fix yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
All the time.
And that, in turn, makes you feel more and more like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Which, in turn, makes it easier for you to be rejected. Because deep down, you don't believe that you're worthy of being accepted.
Yep.
Now, what are we going to do about that?
Consider this new information and got to put some kind of action into plan here about.
Nope. Incorrect.
Incorrect. Okay.
Incorrect. We're not gonna. Action is not where you're going wrong, Jessica.
Okay.
Right? Like where you're going wrong is like. So you're hurt. You don't have confidence in yourself. So let me ask you a question. So you have a 3-year-old, right? Boy or girl?
Yes. 2 girls.
Okay. So you've got a 3-year-old girl. When she has a problem with confidence, what do you do? Do you implement an action plan to build her confidence?
Well, we really haven't had any issues with that I've seen just yet. But I think what I would do would be just to sit down and talk to her about what's going on and why she feels that way.
Yeah. And you know what? That's probably not what you do to yourself.
No.
What I'd guess is that you tell yourself, hey, I need to be more confident and I need to get my fucking shit in order and I need to stop feeling this way and I need to implement actions to change the person that I am.
Yeah.
How would that work with your kid?
She wouldn't understand what I was telling her.
Yeah. And so I think what you need to learn is like how to talk to yourself. And instead of like being, instead of being so corrective, be a little bit compassionate.
Yeah.
Are you nice to yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. So I could ask you, why aren't you nice to yourself? But I don't think that's actually a productive question. I'm going to ask you a different question instead. When did you learn, and this can be hard to answer, so we can, I can ask this a bunch of ways. When did you learn that you're not worth being nice to?
That is a kind of a long story.
There we go. So let's hear it.
I might be able to condense it so it's not
taking
a whole hour.
We don't need to condense it. Just start.
Okay.
See, like, let me pause for a second. So I want to point something out to you. So when you say that you want to condense it, that's the problem. Like, you're not letting yourself, like, you're saying that my story needs to be condensed. You're not accepting what the actual, like, what you need to do in that moment is not condense it, right? You need to accept like who you are fully, and that the reason you are this way is like long and complicated, and that like Cliff Notes is not like, there's a part of you that says, oh, I need to do the Cliff Notes version because everyone else, I'm not worth their time, and we have more important things to talk. Like, you see how you're doing that? It's so fucking, it's automatic. Like, oh, like the Cliff Notes version because I'm not worth it. Like, I'm not worth the full hour. I need to condense things so that we can move on to the action plan. It's so automatic. It's like insidious because it's become your default programming. So we're going to stop right there. And I want you to notice that when you like try to condense it, what you're actually doing is like invalidating yourself.
Okay.
So let's hear the long version.
My parents got divorced when I was little. I would say probably 5 or 6. I'm not sure about the time frame on that. But my dad got remarried 98-ish. I think I was 10 or 11. And middle school, actually, about that time, I started noticing some different things when we would visit my dad on the weekend. Like, I would have just gotten out of the shower at mom's house, getting ready to go to dad's house, and get in the car, and the first thing he says to me is, you need to get in the shower as soon as we get there. My hair is still wet. Why do I need to get in the shower? We get there. We can't sit on the furniture. I have a stepsister who lived with them, but she can sit on the furniture. She can come upstairs out of the designated playroom or play area that they had. But my brother and I, we had to stay down there. I would want to go to school dances in junior high. I wasn't allowed to do that if I still wanted to go to dad's house because it was his time. I was interested in religion at a very early age, and I got interested in more alternative religions and brought that to him. And the biggest memory about that conversation that I have is, you're going to hell because I'm not interested in the same things that he's interested in. He would call, and I actually stopped going to his house after a while because there were just so many small little things that ended up just piling up like this. And I would tell him, I'm not coming. I'm not coming to your house. So he would call, and we would try to have these phone conversations to figure out why I don't want to go to his house anymore. And they would go nowhere. He would say things like, well, you don't have any opinions of your own. They're all your mother's opinions. I'm the adult. You're the child. You need to do what I say, sort of thing. My mom, she'd sit there with me while I have these conversations on the phone with Dad. She'd do her best to just be there for me. And then after these conversations were over, I understand what's going on here. You probably should still go to your dad's, but she would never force me to do anything like that because she could see what was happening. My brother still went to my father's house, and I'm not sure what his time was like when he was there, but after a while, my mom told me that when he was there, Dad would just be like, well, why isn't your sister coming over? My brother and I have a terrible relationship. We are civil to each other. We show up at family events, but we're not close at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's no want to be close either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, neither one of us really want to go further and try to be closer. I to this day, I don't have a want to have a relationship with my father. I will answer his phone calls, talk about whatever it is he's called to talk about. I don't do holidays with him. And my daughter turned 1 in June. We had a small birthday at our house. I did not call to invite him. And I did not feel guilty about that. It felt like a relief. I don't have a want to be closer to him. I have a want to figure out how to just be okay with what happened.
Yeah. So, damn, Jessica, thank you so much. There's so much there.
Yeah.
I imagine Twitch chat is exploding right now, but I can't see them, so that's probably good. So, and you shouldn't watch them either. No watching Twitch chat.
I'm not.
Good. So, Jessica, my first question, I'm going to ask kind of weird questions, okay? So the first thing that I want to point out is, like, why don't you feel guilty for treating your dad the way that you do?
Because I did feel guilty about it for a long time because, he's your dad. You should be close to your dad. And I think I did try for a little while to figure out how to make some type of relationship work, but it just stressed me out. It made me feel worse. It never made me feel better. So I don't give it that effort anymore.
Beautiful. So if you want to... I'm sorry, did you want to say something else?
I was going to say that something that I didn't really talk about is another thing that he would say to me. My stepmother is biracial. He would tell me that I don't want to come over because I'm racist. He would say things like that as well. And I actually tried to have a direct conversation with her a little over a year ago. I have the conversation on my phone still, and I don't know how to explain it other than she still wanted to treat me like I was 12 years old and that everything that I did was wrong and she had no fault of her own in anything that happened. And I asked my father to read that conversation, and I asked him if we could have a discussion about the things that we talked about and the way that I feel about what happened. And he told me that he can't fix what's in the past, so he doesn't want to talk about it. So,
wow. What do you think about that?
That was kind of a reinforcement on the fact that I don't need to give it effort if I'm not going to get anything from it.
Okay. So, I want to say something. So, I think your road forward actually comes from your current relationship with your dad. Because in a weird way, like, even though you're doing things like, so just think about this, your self-judgmental, self-critical nature tends to latch on to all kinds of stuff to make you feel like a piece of shit. And when it comes to the way that you treat your dad, I would think that the self-judgmental part of you has plenty of ammo to be self-critical of you with the way that you treat your dad now, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't.
No.
You see that?
Yeah.
So that's actually true north for us. That's your solution. If you can understand what has happened in your mind to accept your relationship with your dad and not feel guilty about it, because you're not self-critical, even though you're on paper doing things that a lot of people would think would be like not treating your dad well, like not inviting him to his grandkid's first birthday party. On paper, that's something that feels like neglectful and mean, but it isn't. And more importantly, you don't trick yourself into thinking it isn't. So you actually feel confident and accept yourself, even though on paper that behavior can be perceived as bad.
Right.
Right? So, like, do you see how that's our kernel of confidence? All we have to do is understand, like, how did you get to that place with your dad? And if we can understand how you got to that place and we can duplicate it, then you're going to be fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So, now I'm going to ask you, so you said earlier that, like, there were a lot of these things that piled up with your dad, right? You mentioned that, like, even though you had just showered, like, he wouldn't let you sit on furniture.
Yeah.
He wouldn't let you go to school dances. He thinks you're racist. So when you say all of that stuff piled up, what is it there that's piling up?
It was kind of like little messages that you're not worth my love.
Yeah. So, Jessica, now I'm going to ask you a question. When you're self-critical when you beat yourself up, is there some sentiment that you are not worth your own love?
I don't know.
How does it feel when you beat yourself up?
I don't really know how to answer that.
Okay, so let's do this. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how... So this is the barrier, right? Like, this is the barrier of our understanding. So we've come this far, and I think you're doing fantastic, by the way. And I can see that we're bringing up a lot of very raw feelings for you. How are you holding up, actually? Let me ask you that first.
I'm okay, because it's not like this hasn't happened before.
Okay.
I'm trying to remain a little bit in control so we can still talk.
Okay. I appreciate that. And also, if you don't want to remain in control, that's fine too.
Okay.
And we can pull the plug anytime you want to. So I don't, just let me know where your limit is. Okay. But now tell me a little bit about, like, give me an example of, like, how you're critical towards yourself or something that you judge yourself for.
I'm actually a student in school currently as well.
Okay. So that's insane.
Yeah. But I do really well in school, actually. And
I'm not surprised.
Very important that I do really well. And if I do less than well, I can beat myself up about that.
Why is it important that you do well?
Because when I started school, started college, I was 17.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't do well then.
Okay.
I didn't go. I didn't follow through on assignments. I withdrew from classes, tried to get another semester, and it was just the same cycle over and over again. So I want to succeed this time.
Okay.
I know I can succeed, and I don't want to go back into that old pattern.
Okay. Okay.
So when I'm not doing well, it's like you don't want to fall back. You've got to pick it up. You got to do better. Instead of being like a 4.0 in a class is not that important.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay if you get a 90% and not 100%. Like, part of me knows this, but I don't think I allow myself to do that.
Okay. And what happens when you get let's say a 90 or heaven forbid an 88?
I know, right? I try to figure out what I did wrong and what I could have done better, and make sure that doesn't happen on the next assignment.
Okay.
I don't spend a lot of time being like, oh, you're stupid. I don't do that. It's just there's not a lot of focus.
Yeah, so this feels like it's in the wrong direction, actually, to me.
Okay.
Like, the sentiment that I'm getting from your college experience seems like the emotions that are tied up there have to do with your performance when you were 17 and like fixing that mistake. This feels like it's very different from like what your dad made you feel like.
Okay.
It also feels like relatively balanced to me. Like, do you think that the way that you beat yourself up over college is like a problem, or you think you do a pretty good job with it?
I don't think it's a problem. I just couldn't really think of any examples other than that. That was the first thing that came to mind.
So I think once again, it sounds to me like you're actually doing pretty well there.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of screwed up, like you're sort of proactive, and you're telling me that you don't beat yourself up when you get an 88. Therefore, it's not what we're looking for.
Okay.
Right? Like, because we're talking about when you beat yourself up. So, and it's okay. Like, so it's great that you shared that example. So, like, a lot of times, you know, when we're talking about things, we sort of like, it's going to take us some time to find what we're looking for. And it was really bizarre that you went right to it, you know, in the first 5 minutes. Like, that's awesome. But we can't expect that kind of success going forward. So what's something else that you beat yourself up for?
Okay. For the longest time, I didn't have friends. I didn't try to have friends. So I've made sure to do things like a story time with my kids, so they have some sort of socialization. Even though that whole thing makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
And when I don't do that with them, well, they're going to be just like you, and you can't let that happen. That sort of thing.
Okay. I think now we're getting to it. So when you say they're going to be just like you, what does that mean? What are you like, Jessica?
I don't know how to talk to people.
And what kind of person doesn't know how to talk to people?
The first thing I said was not a very good one.
What do you mean by that?
Someone that knew how to talk to people is a better person. Someone who knows how to socialize with people.
And so you're afraid that your kids are going to end up like what?
Isolated and not know how to relate to the world.
Okay. And you feel like you're isolated and you don't know how to relate to the world?
Most of the time, yes.
And what do you think it like, so this is going to sound kind of weird, but there are all kinds of reasons why people will be isolated and not be able to relate to the world. What's the reason that you're not able to do it?
Probably because I accepted too much rejection and just kind of let that feed the feeling I needed to be isolated.
This isn't okay. So I'm going to stop you. You're not allowed to use anything that I tell you.
Okay.
Okay. Like, I hate it when people give me the right answer. So like, this is the part of you that's like coming up with the right, like, that's a cognitive answer. I'm asking you like there's a part of you that feels like you're just not okay with the rest of the world.
Right.
Right? Like, tell me about that part. Don't spoon feed me my own bullshit. I mean, you're right, but let's step away from that. Right? So why do you feel like, let's say 1 year ago, or let's actually go back to when you said that you haven't had a whole lot of friends for a while. Let's say like 4 years ago. Did you have friends?
Okay. One.
Okay. Why didn't you feel like you had a whole, like, did you have no friends at one point?
I've had one friend that we've been close with off and on. And I guess I could kind of see people that, you know, they go out with their friends on the weekend, and I never did that sort of thing. I was never really interested in the things that they would do, like go to bars and whatnot.
Yeah.
That wasn't my thing. And I guess I just never found somebody that was interested in the same type of things that I was when I was interested in them. I never found somebody who I had common ground with, and I thought that meant there was something wrong with me.
Yeah. And tell me about that feeling.
It made me not want to socialize. Because if there's something wrong with me, then who would want to talk with me? Sort of thing.
So I want you to notice something that's going on right now, right? So you're using some amount of cognition to rationalize like good reasons why you weren't able to make friends. Like you just weren't interested in going out and getting hammered, you know, and most of the people you were hanging out with were interested in going out and getting hammered. That makes perfect sense. And every time you say something like that, it moves away from the feeling that like some part of you felt like you just weren't worth getting to know. Right. You see that?
Yeah.
And so I can also see that your facial expression has changed. You seem calmer to me now. So
it makes me calmer to try to rationalize things.
Absolutely. Right? So what do you do? Like, tell me about that. How does rationalizing help you stay calm?
My emotions can be very turbulent.
Yep.
And in the past, I've gotten so caught up in them that they've led me to some pretty bad places.
Yep. Like what?
I had a problem. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and about that time, with my diagnosis, I had a lot of suicidal ideation. So I guess it's been kind of like I want to say a coping mechanism, but I'm not sure how to express it.
Beautiful. You mean the rationalized thinking?
Yeah. Just try to step back.
Yep, we call that a defense mechanism.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but let me ask you something. I have a couple of questions for you, Jessica. So, do you feel like the judgment the self-judgmental part of you, and I want you to kind of envision that, like, so you're like, I think there's a part of you that recognizes that you're an awesome and wonderful person. Is that true?
Yes.
And then there's this other part of you that thinks that you're a piece of shit.
Yes.
So let me ask you something. Does that person that thinks you're a piece of shit, is that rooted in emotion or rooted in rationality?
Emotion.
Absolutely. Right. So I want you and other people to kind of understand this, that like what happens is that part of your mind hijacks your rational thinking.
Yeah.
It's like there's like a rational part of your mind that knows that you're a good person, but when those emotions rise up, they like bully your rational mind and they say, hey, I feel like a piece of shit and I want you to give me 1,000 reasons why I'm a piece of shit. And then your mind starts thinking those thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But the root is emotion. And I think this is where, like, the crazy thing here is that, Jessica, I think you were taught, you're not, like, mentally ill. You were taught that you're, like this is important to understand. You were taught that you're not worth it.
Right.
Do you see that? Like,
yes.
This was a lesson that you learned. Because when we're kids and we're growing up, we learn all kinds of things that are not, like, information. That are not, like, state capitals in mathematics.
Yeah.
Our parents give us a sense of value in like who we are. And right now, I imagine that you're an amazing parent.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And like, how long does it take when your 3-year-old starts crying? How long does it take to calm her down?
It depends on the situation, but not very long usually.
Like, how long are we talking?
A couple minutes.
Really? A couple minutes? I would say it's
like
even
5 minutes tops.
tops.
Yeah.
Can you calm her down in less than 2 minutes?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I would be surprised if, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if half the time you calmed her down in less than 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, 60 seconds of crying is a lot, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So I think actually I wouldn't be surprised if all of, like, you calmed her down in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And that tells me that you're actually doing an amazing job at being a mother. Because kids who get calmed down are kids that are secure.
Yeah.
And so when mom tells me everything is going to be okay, like, she has faith in you, and she wouldn't have that faith in you. Like, kids don't have faith in like bad parents, right? Like, the reason that they have faith in you is because like they know that when you say everything is okay, actually everything ends up okay. And 99% of the time everything ends up okay. So she has faith in you, and that means you're doing an awesome job. It's something called secure attachment. You can like do a Google Scholar search. But I would guess that your kid...
My degree that I'm getting is child development.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So, like, your kids have, I think they have very secure attachment.
Yeah.
And so I think you're an awesome person, and you're instilling them a sense of confidence. And what they're learning, like, is that they're a good person, that the world, like, makes sense.
Right.
Whereas what you learned from your dad is that the world is a confusing place, and that actually, like, you don't have a voice, and you're not, like, a good person.
Right.
Right? That you can take a shower, and he tells you, like, you're fucking not allowed to sit in furniture.
Right.
Like, if you think about one of the things that makes, like, you know, that feels to me like he's making you feel subhuman.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't alive when civil rights was like a big thing back in the 60s, but I can imagine that when you're a human being and you were told that you're not allowed to drink at one water fountain, you have to drink at a different water fountain, like, it makes people feel subhuman. And when I hear the way that your dad treated you, it makes me feel like he treated you in a subhuman way. And when you beat yourself up, I think there's a part of you that learned that you were subhuman. And that emotion is there. And you can argue against it all you want to, but that emotion doesn't give a fuck. Does that make sense? Because when it starts to hijack your rational reasoning, like, it's like a tidal wave, and you can try to put up whatever kind of, like, you can try to, you know, blow or splash towards the tidal wave as much as you want to, but it's not going to stop it, and it doesn't fucking work. Right?
Right.
So now the question becomes, how do you fix this? What do you think?
I have no idea.
How do you help your child feel like a human being?
I talk to her like she matters.
Yeah. Do you talk to yourself like you matter?
Not as often as I should.
Well, there you go. Do you talk to yourself like you matter when it comes to school?
Yes.
There we go, right? Remember when I said, like, the school that's not the right example. Because I think that's a good example of what you're doing right. When you feel guilty for not inviting your dad to your daughter's first birthday party, how do you talk to yourself?
I didn't feel guilty for that.
Yeah, right? So and this is the key thing. I think you did feel guilty, and I think you talked to yourself like you mattered. And what you actually told yourself was that, hey, on paper, I know that I should invite him, but, like, he's an asshole, and I don't want him to be a part of my daughter's life. And, like, you talk to yourself like you matter, right? Like, in that moment, you matter to yourself, and your opinion matters, and what you believe matters, and the love that you have for your child matters more than his feelings. And in a weird way, like, in the same way that it's instinctive for you to beat yourself up, it's actually instinctive sometimes for you to treat yourself like you matter. Like, when you get into a fight with your husband, and I'm assuming you're married to a man, but when you get into a fight with your husband and, like, he's in the wrong, how do you talk to yourself?
We don't have many arguments.
Okay.
I I'm trying to think of an example.
Yeah, so actually you don't have to, because I think that's telling, right? So there's a chance that the reason that you guys don't have arguments is because, you know, like, it's a very like you're not willing to argue with him, or he's not willing to argue with you. Like, maybe one of you guys has, like, there's a big power dynamic and you guys don't want to pick a fight. But I'd guess the reason that you don't have arguments with him is because you actually advocate, and when you talk to him, you treat yourself like you matter, and you make sure that he understands that.
Yes.
And like, that's your answer. You're already doing it in some dimensions of your life. But there's a part of you that you don't treat yourself like that, right? Like, so when it comes to your kids, when it comes to school, when it comes to your current relationship with your dad, and when it comes to your relationship with your husband, you treat yourself like you matter. But there are other things, other feelings that you have where you feel like you're a piece of shit, and what you do is you try to bully that part, right? You fight against it. You say, "Oh, you shouldn't feel that way." But my guess is that when your daughter is not feeling well, you never tell her you shouldn't feel that way.
No.
Right?
No.
What do you tell her?
Try to talk about the situation. Like you said, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. But when you're now here's the punchline, Jessica. When you're self-critical towards yourself, do you ever tell yourself, does the thought "it's going to be okay" ever enter your mind?
No.
Absolutely. Right? What enters your mind is a fucking action plan. You're not okay, but if you were to do these things, you'll be okay in the future. That's not what you tell your daughter. You don't tell her you have to do X, Y, and Z and then things will be okay. You tell her, have faith in yourself. Things are going to be okay no matter what. We'll figure this out. I'm here with you. That's what you tell her, but that's not what you tell yourself. And if you can learn how to tell yourself that, then you're going to be fine. It's a good sigh. How you feeling right now?
That I'm glad I prepared my desk with tissues. Yeah. I'm feeling like we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. You look a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
It's weird how that feels, right?
It's good, though.
Yeah, it's very good. It means we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts or questions at this point?
I had a thought.
Yeah.
And I'll share it. I thought about making a sign for my desk that, you know, it's going to be okay, and just kind of putting it up there. What do you think about that?
What do you think about it?
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Okay, then. Right?
Yeah.
I think the one thing I would caution you about is watch out for the judgment even with that. So in a weird way, what I can foresee happening is that you look up at the sign and you say, "Oh, I used to believe that, but now I don't anymore." And you can judge yourself for, like, does that make sense?
Yes.
You can even judge yourself for, like, not believing the sign. And you're like, you can even tell yourself, "Oh, I used to be on the right path, but fuck, look at where I got myself now." So watch out for that.
Okay.
So I think that sign can be wonderful and inspiring. And at the same time, you should maybe tack a smaller sign, which is that if that's not how I'm feeling right now, that's okay too.
I like that.
You get that?
Yeah. It makes me think of my husband when we were dating. He made a sign that's actually hanging up in our house that was the plan, you know, get married, have kids, graduate, get jobs, happily ever fucking after is what it says on the bottom of it. It just makes me think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's that last part, right? It's not the plan, it's the whatever.
Yeah.
The whatever at the bottom. And that's what you need to learn how to do for yourself.
Yeah.
Concretely, I think if you're not seeing a therapist, you should really think about it.
I do.
Okay, great. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to say that maybe we should go ahead and stop, because I think this is a great place to stop. How do you feel?
I agree.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Jessica. I'm going to thank you very much, and strong work today.